In this video, I'm going to show you a system to raise money for your idea, your project, or your current business. Even, and that's the trick, if you don't know a single investor or have zero network to start from. So whether you're starting completely from scratch, you're a young professional or whatever, or you want to take your business to the next level, but you need the funding and the money to do that, I'm going to share with you a clear, proven, and that's the key here, a proven 4-step system and show you exactly how to get funded. Now, this system is fast and simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. So it takes real work. You'll have to put in the time, the effort, the energy, all of that. But the best part with this system, as I've already mentioned, is that it works even if you're starting from zero. So I'll guide you through the whole process, step by step. And by the time this video ends, my objective is that you will have answers to the biggest questions and challenges you might be facing when it comes to raising money. Now, before we get into the system, I want to cut through, how am I going to say that? Through this new kind of endless and boring debate that I keep seeing on LinkedIn. So basically a debate full of hype and buzzwords, but with zero nuance. So on one side, we've got the bootstrappers. So basically people screaming that fundraising is dead, that it's one of the biggest scam ever, that the future belongs to the one-person billion-dollar company, all of that. And yes, they're talking about AI as well, how AI is making teams irrelevant, how, 5 people can run an empire. I mean, I think you get the picture and you know what I'm talking about. So that's the bootstrappers on one end. Basically, fundraising is a scam. And then on the other side, well, you got the VC crowd. Of course, they are pushing their agenda. And so they are pushing that mantra that it's all about capital and speed and scale. And it's a bit of race or die. Okay? But like with most things in life, the truth, you could say, is often found somewhere in between. So it's not black or white. And I think the biggest problem we have with the world today, and if you solve that, I think you can solve many of the world problems, is that we live in a world where many beliefs, the beliefs that people cling to, are so extreme and so rigid that they simply, you could say, don't hold up in the reality of life. But it doesn't matter. People just cling to those beliefs as if, it was a matter of life and death. So be very careful when you adopt such extreme views. It's a slippery slope. And we often tend, all of us, I'm not saying I'm better than anyone at this, but we often tend to fall deeply in love with our own ideas. And that blinds us. So should you bootstrap? Should you raise? I think the reality is that both are half-truths. Both camps push narratives. So I would say that most of that LinkedIn hyped advice only applies to very specific kinds of businesses. So usually, software as a service, the SaaS, AI, coaching, consulting, software plays, but probably not your business and certainly not everyone's business. So if you are building something, I would say, outside of the usual LinkedIn bubble, the usual LinkedIn stereotypes, so maybe something physical or with hard assets or, something creative, complex, just different, I would say that those generic rules don't apply. So forget all the hype. I would say that neither path is automatically right or wrong. So stop asking, should I bootstrap? Should I raise? The answer is, it depends. And I would say that the better questions are, what does your business actually need? What are you building? Where are you starting from? Because we don't all start equal in this game. What do you need for your business to actually grow and survive? And if money is part of the equation, well, I think that's what this system is built for, to help you get that money. Now, who is this for? And I mean, you probably got it from the title. It's for people who want to raise money. Yes, but I'm recording this crash course for 2 reasons. And the first reason is, since I've added to my LinkedIn profile that I am an investor acquiring SMBs, so small and mid-sized businesses, I've been flooded with people trying to pitch me their idea and to raise funds. Now, I mean, fair, but to be very clear, I don't invest in new ideas or startups. I mean, I don't have the financial bandwidth for that, or even, you could say, the risk appetite for that. So aside from my own startups, I only invest in small and mid-sized businesses, ideally blue-collar or boring businesses, as we call them, and that have at least 1.5 million in revenue or 10 plus years in the game. So if you recognize yourself in that and are looking for funding or getting acquired, sure, reach out to me. But if you're watching this video and you are in the startup or new idea world, please don't reach out. Use the system that I'm going to teach you to find other people to finance that idea. So that was the first reason. And the reason number two for me to put that out there is that because of the type of content that I make and a few other videos I've done about how to build or how to improve businesses, I get so many questions from people reaching out, asking for advice. And I think that the recurring theme lately has been how to raise money. So obviously, I don't have the time, and it's also not my mission to help everyone individually. But whenever I can, you could say help at scale, well, I try to do it as much as I can. And so this video is me doing exactly that. Now, the intro is getting a bit long, but by the way, for those of you who really want my individual advice, I do paid consultations. Now, Karl Marx wouldn't be happy, but I have two models for that. And the first model, very quickly, is a 30-minute call. So that is perfect if you need clarity or, validation of your idea, or you're somewhat lost and need strategic direction. So I will give you a bold, no bullshit challenge to your thinking. So that is called AskGaetan. And the second option is a full day session. So where we dig deep into what I call your untapped business potential. So I help you find the revenue that you are missing. Now, a fair warning about this one, it's more for advanced businesses. So if you're starting out and seeking a consultation, go for that 30-minute call. But that full day session, yeah, it's not cheap, but I back it up with a 10x return guarantee. Anyway, if you're interested, you just go to my website, www.gaetanportaels.com, and you check out the Work With Me section. Now, one last thing before I dive into the system. And I want to remind you that a few months ago, also on vacation, I recorded a 20-minute video, something like that, titled, I helped raise 5.2 million euros and how you can do it too. And that video is still highly valuable. And if you're in the process of raising money, or if you're thinking about it, I highly recommend you to check it out as well. Because in that video, I went, you could say, deep into some key concepts that you should master if you're trying to raise money. So stuff like understanding optionality and upside, which is key. How to tailor your pitch for different investor types, because risk capital and conservative profiles, they're not triggered by the same things. How do you build proof and success indicators for investors? I also went into how to test the market appetite for your idea before launching it. How to gather insights and testimonials, which will help you boost your fundraising round. And I also touched, of course, on tips and hacks for finding your first investors. But in that previous video, I was mostly focused on VCs and business angels. So the key difference with this video is that here, in this video, I'm sharing a system to find your first investors who are not VCs or BAs or business angels. Often, they're not even professional investors. Because I think the world out there changes so quickly. And of course, the VC world was already a difficult one 6 months ago, when I dropped that first video. But since then, it has become, at least according to me, almost impossible for the average Joes and average chains of these worlds to get VC funding. Anyway, go and watch that earlier video, because there is a ton of value there that applies no matter what kind of investor you're looking after or you're after. Now, all of that said, I would say let's get into the system. Now, first things first, there are a few, I think, big misconceptions that most people have when it comes to raising money. I think the biggest misconception, number one, is raising money is about luck or who you know. So it's that idea that you need an existing network or connections to raise money. And I'm not gonna lie, it helps. But the reality is that fundraising can usually be systemized. So you can take fundraising and put that into a step-by-step process that anyone can follow to identify, engage, and convert potential investors. Number two of the big misconceptions, which is a rookie mistake. It is thinking that if my project is strong, maybe even worse, if my idea is any good, money will come to me. But again, the truth is that ideas are worthless. Worthless. It's only the ability to execute those ideas that matters. And when it comes to actual projects, not even ideas, unless you are some kind of singularity, I mean, there are plenty of solid projects out there. So we tend to fall in love with our ideas. And so we think that my idea is brilliant, so it deserves funding. I should get that funding, but you deserve nothing. So you will need more than that. You will need more than a good idea. Execution, market timing, and storytelling, they matter way more than most people realize. If you take these three combined, I would say it's 80%, 70 to 80% of the fundraising game. Your idea, your project is 20 or 30% of that. But at the end of the day, fundraising is as much about understanding what motivates investors than it is about the project itself. Now, two other big misconceptions are investors only care about numbers and projections. And it's true to a certain extent. You need some numbers, you need some projections to back it up, although most of them never hold in the distance. But I would say it's especially when it comes to the types of investors we're going to talk about today. Most of them invest based on trust, passion, and your sharpness, and the sharpness of the team, if you have a team around you. And of course, I said it, numbers matter, but they are usually not the first thing that tips the scale. And the last misconception I want to address, it's misconception number 4, is that you need a perfect, finished product before raising money, before raising funds. And in the real world, early stage investors, they often bet on potential, not perfection. So if you have the right potential, and potential is not only in your idea, again, it's also what they see in you and in your ability, your potential to execute. So waiting until everything is flawless, your product, your pitch deck, the timing, well, that will kill your momentum. But if you want to learn more about how to test what I said, the market without a product, how to build real proof for investors, and how to create an MVP, a minimum viable product that attracts investors, go watch that previous video. It covers all of that. Now, of course, there are many other misconceptions out there, but I think these are the big ones that trip people up early on in the process. So, how do you actually raise money when you're starting from zero or have no network, no connections? So, the system that I'm about to show you is one that almost, you would say, no one talks about because it's pure insider knowledge. And I'm not saying, this is some mythical secret that they don't want you to know that I discovered while trekking through the Atlas Mountains, and I dug up some hidden treasure with an ancient parchment in it. No, that's not what I'm telling you. But it's insider knowledge. It's privileged information. So it's the kind of method that the leading business incubators came up with and they use behind the scenes. Because most advice on raising money that I read is it either comes from academics who've never raised a single dime in their life, or they come, from the unicorn founders or people that are in a very particular business disposition, or of course from the big shot M&A or private equity guys that are completely disconnected from the little guys. And I would say that everything else, you got the academics, the founders from unicorns, the big shot guys, and all the rest is basically plain bullshit and fluff. So either way, most of that stuff doesn't work when you're starting from zero. No contacts, no credits, just an idea or just a small business that works. But on the other hand, the stuff that works, that those incubators have invented, well, I mean, they're not exactly rushing to broadcast it to the world. So the system, which, to be clear, I have not invented, is a process that allows anyone to raise money. And many call it something like the LinkedIn fundraising method. And if you follow it, if you stay determined and restless, then you could say that all else being equal, of course, but you will usually be able to raise money in 3 to 6, maybe 9 months, even if you start knowing absolutely no one. And enough of the teasing. So you would say that the core idea behind this system is actually pretty simple. Raising money is a sales exercise. It's just like selling a product or a service, except that in this case, you're selling your idea, your project, your company to investors. So it's a different product and a different target, but just like in sales, the cold outreach to investors is cold outreach, plain and simple, which means that you need to understand a few key things first, because even if I say it's sales, well, even old school sales is dead. So you cannot use the old school sales techniques to raise money anymore. So on the list of key things that you need to understand, the first thing is that investors, they are not some monolithic group. There's no such thing as investors. Okay? That doesn't exist. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. So, for example, if my 5-year-old who's playing by the pool right now, I'm very lucky to do so because it's almost 38 degrees right here. So if my 5-year-old son asked me, Dad, what does an investor want? Well, you would probably say money, of course. But unless that money comes with 100% guaranteed return, which is impossible, there's no single answer to that question. Because different investors want different things. There isn't one investor. There are thousands of investors. You could say billions if you want to get technical. Each with their own needs, requirements, constraints, and interests. So just like real people, no two are alike. So your job as a founder or as someone who wants to raise money is to build a funnel. And you really got to think of it like a sales or a marketing funnel. So with the 3, you could say, classical layers, and each layer with its own set of filters. So, you got the tofu, the top of the funnel, which is basically the awareness stage. Then you got the middle of the funnel, which is the consideration stage. Now they are aware, so they are considering. And you got the bottom of the funnel, which is basically the decision stage. Okay? They are aware, they consider, and they decide, do I invest or not? And so at the top of the funnel, you need to get a bunch of leads, aka, people interested in investing. And then, just like you would do in a sales process, you will need to segment and qualify those leads. So once you segment and qualify, and we're going to get into the ways to do that, you need to move the ones who are a good fit through the funnel, and you have to close those leads. In other words, you need to get a certain number of them to actually invest. And the reality is that the hardest part of fundraising is not the network you start with. It's the conversion rate. So from top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel. So some people will have, 5 leads and 4 will invest. And others will have 200 leads at the top of their funnel and only 1 will invest. And of course, it's multifactorial, okay? How hard it's gonna be depends on a bunch of variables. So what your project actually is, what industry how far along you are. Is it an idea? Do you have an MVP? Is it already on the market? What kind of proof you've got? How much you're trying to raise? Who else is investing? All of that. How you can sell the vision and the bigger picture around it. So sometimes it's easy and smooth, but I would say that often it's not. So you need to be prepared, even with this system, to push hard. But, and I think that's the key, it's a problem that can, how am I going to say that? It can mechanically be solved. So if most variables aren't in your favor, well, then it just becomes a numbers game. And honestly, I think that 99% of people seriously underestimate how much money you can raise just by sticking to a solid, well-structured process. One where new leads are always flowing in at the top of that funnel. And that's the key. It's a numbers game. If all the variables are against you, you need to have a bunch of leads coming in all the time, always flowing in. Now, I'm going to walk you through the whole 4-step process. But for this to actually work, you need to take a step back from all the fundraising hype and the stories that you read on LinkedIn. This is key. This is real advice for the real world. So you got to break out of the whole fundraising rounds mindset. Series A, B, C, all of that. The whole, I'm raising 500,000 at a 2 million valuation, and stop. Okay. If you don't have the experience, the existing network, or the assets to back that up, then it's not a storytelling strategy, as they will tell you. It's fucking ego. And ego will not attract the kind of investor that I'm about to show you how to reach. So for this system to work, you need to treat every investor as a one-on-one relationship. One investor at a time, one conversation at a time, each one with its own deal. And you're not going to win them over by talking about rounds, or you will win them by being sharp, clear, grounded, and relatable. Okay, so let me repeat that. You will win them by being sharp, clear, grounded, and relatable. So don't put on the act. Again, if you have nothing to back up the act, you will just look like a fool and a moron. And so many people try to put on the act, like they have this brilliant, magnificent idea with nothing to back it up. And then they enter, I'm currently my Series A and all of that. And they wonder why they don't get funded. Well, because their ego is speaking louder than the reality. So sharp, clear, grounded, and relatable. Write it down. Those are going to be the 4 dimensions that need to come through. Now, let me break it down for you. Okay, it's in a very, again, simple 4-step process. So step number 1 is you gotta load the top of your funnel. Again, we've said it's a 3-step funnel and you need as many people at the top as you can. So how are you gonna load that? With what kind of people? And the key here is start by finding people from your industry who have real experience in your industry and who have some level of connection to what you are building. Okay? So don't look for investors. That's key. So what do I mean by that? What you want is to look for people who already understand your market. So people who have worked at companies like yours, for example, but ideally way bigger or corporate size. And I'm going to give you a few examples after that. So people who have worked at a company like yours, or people who, that have built something similar or that have dealt with the same problems that you're solving. And the key is that these people should get it right away. So you don't want to waste time and energy explaining why your idea matters. Okay? They need to be able to see the value instantly or not. And that's another type of feedback, right? So if many people from your industry who should get it instantly don't get the value, that might tell you something. Okay? And maybe you are right and you are seeing a future that no one else is seeing, possibly. But in most cases, it's not the case. So if you get that type of feedback and that no one is seeing the value, again, you might be a singularity, but treat that as important data. Don't discard the idea or the fact that your idea might be a bad one, okay? It doesn't matter. So you want people that already understand your market. And then the question becomes, where do you find those people? Well, on LinkedIn. This is key. On LinkedIn. And you should really invest in a LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Okay? LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I think it's $800 per year, something like that. And if the money is tight, at least get the free 30-day trial, okay? Now, for those of you that don't know, what is LinkedIn Sales Navigator? So it's basically a LinkedIn plan that offers, you would say, advanced search filters. So you can target people based on their interests, on keywords, on their current or previous companies, on geography, on seniority level, and way more. Now, I'm not going to give you a full course here on LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I think there are plenty of amazing free resources online that go really deep in how to use it. Lots of great hacks. So definitely check it out. Go on YouTube, LinkedIn Sales Navigator hacks and all of that, and filter videos by popularity and number of views. And watch a few videos. Take the time to master LinkedIn Sales Navigator from a technical perspective. It's easy. You don't need to be an engineer or whatever, but there are some basics that you need to master, because that will seriously make all the difference in your ability to target and find the right people. So we are gonna find those people that understand our industry via LinkedIn. Key. All right, so back to what I was saying. Let me try to make it clear with an example. So let's say you are building a company or creating a product, I don't know, a new skincare line, for example. So what are you going to do? You're going to look for people who've worked at companies like L'Oréal or Estee Lauder. Now, obviously, and this is the whole point, you want former executives, people with senior roles or people who've been in management positions and who have a bit of money to invest. Because there's absolutely no point in reaching out to the person, at the very bottom of the ladder. And no disrespect meant here, but these people might be brilliant. They might get what you are doing, but they are not in a position to back it. They're not in a position to invest. Okay. And again, obviously, those people with a bit of money will not advertise that. But if you take former executives, former directors, stuff like that recently retired or that are above 50, something like that, and that have had a nice corporate career, these people will usually have some money or the ability to invest because they've paid off their home mortgage or stuff like that. So we're not looking, again, for investors. You just want those former execs who get what you're doing and who hypothetically have a bit of money. And I'm not talking about millions, okay? Even if you're raising $1 million, you can do it in smaller checks, but we're getting back to that. Now, let me give you another example. Let's say that you are a brilliant engineer and that you're working on a new type of electric bike. So you should be looking for people with senior roles at Tesla, for example, or Bosch, the German company, former execs from their e-bike division, for example. Because Bosch, and not many people know that, but it's absolutely massive in the e-bike motors and batteries. So anyway, I think you get the idea. So same thing if you are building an app, a fintech, or a personal finance app. You want to target former senior executives from Goldman Sachs, from JP Morgan, from Stripe, or whoever has actually played in that space. So you get the idea. That's why I was saying you're not looking for investors. You're looking for people who already understand the game that you are playing. So when it comes to loading the top of your funnel, the number one source by far is former executives, from your industry. We've got both money, even if not enough money to back the whole thing up, and relevant experience. Now, let me give you a few other sources that you can tap into. But make no mistake, the first source that I just gave you, former executives from within your industry, is where 80% of your focus should go. It's the highest leverage one. So the rest is bonus. So I'm going to give you a few other sources to tap into. We're still in step 1, loading the top of your funnel. I'm going to show you what you do with them and how you convert that further down the road. Now, a secondary source to consider is people in adjacent industries. So I'm talking about industries that intersect with yours, that kind of touch what you are building. And it's getting really hot here. So think, what are adjacent industries? Think about suppliers, distributors, even maybe key customers if we're talking about a B2B idea. Now, to be clear, they don't have to be your suppliers or your distributors or whatever. So if we take the example back from that skincare line that I mentioned earlier, on the supplier sides of L'Oréal, for example, you could target former executives from the packaging suppliers, or cosmetic chemistry, or ingredient manufacturers, contract manufacturers, white labelers. Also, there are many white labelers in those industries. So that's on the supplier side. You can run a search and play with the ChatGPT and other deep search engines to try to find what are all the adjacent industries on the supplier side. On the distributor side from L'Oréal, it could be former executives from beauty distributors, from online platforms, big e-commerce online platforms reselling skincare products, high-end dermatology clinics, esthetician salon networks, all of that. Everything on the distributor side. And on the customer side, again, think big dermatologists, beauty influencers, people like that. Now, they are not core to your industry, but they are close enough to get it fast. That's the thing that you want. You want people to get it fast. You don't want to do a 2-hour TED talk to explain your product. And whatever group you're going after, and you could go after the different groups, you're always hunting for that same sweet spot. You want people who know the space, who know the industry. You want people who have context. And yes, again, you want people who have money to invest. So it's a simple formula, but it's easy to forget, right? So it's critical to stick to this. They know the industry, they have the context, and you suspect, or you have all the indicators that they have some money to invest. Another source to consider related to these two, so it's people from your industry or from adjacent ones, but who've recently cashed out. So maybe they sold their business, or they got acquired, or they were absorbed into a bigger group, whatever. They have expertise, they have insider knowledge, they have proven experience, probably connections and a network to share, and they have cash, right? So again, I don't say those are the easiest to find, but those are sources to consider. Plus, these kind of people, the ones who have recently sold their business or whatever, they often want to stay close to the action. So they might be open to new bets. And finally, maybe, as I was talking about this, I could say it's a bit of a stretch, but it's also maybe worth a look depending on your industry. It's niche influencers. So think YouTubers, TikTokers, podcasters. It's a big trend on podcasts right now. Newsletter writers, basically anyone with a monetized audience that overlaps with what you are building. This is the key. If you go after niche, you want people with a sufficient monetized audience that overlaps with what you are building. Now, this is a tricky one because the big name influencers, forget it. Okay? Unless you are a big name yourself, but consider these people unreachable. So we got the big names on one hand. Then on the other hand, we got the nano or the micro influencers. And these people, well, they might care, but they are probably not liquid enough. They don't have the cash to invest. So you have to find that sweet spot. Not too famous, but not too broke. Okay? And then I would say that with those profiles, you got two main angles to consider. So they have insider knowledge, of course, in an industry. They have some level of expertise, and they might have some cash. Plus, you get access to their audience, which can be a gold mine for early customers or pre-orders. Okay? Pre-orders, it's interesting. So this is not the main strategy. I'm giving you this as a bonus, but pre-order financing, it's basically free money. So what you do is you get customers to buy before the product is out. And so they are basically funding your production without you giving away some equity. So it's a nice thing to do if you have a sufficient audience, but pre-order financing. So that's the first angle. They have the knowledge, some cash, you have access to their audience as customers. Or the second angle to consider is maybe you can use their platform for a podcast or an interview. So if you can deliver enough value to their audience, well, you might call for investors while you are on air, right? While you have that platform, or you could launch a crowdfunding. So it's a way. Anyway, I've spent way too much time on that top of the funnel, but I think this is key. So watch it again, take some notes, and then assisted by AI and deep search and all of that, try to find all the keywords to root out these people. But I'm not going to get into the weeds of that, but you get the idea. All right, that was step one. So now you have a process to load your top of the funnel with these people that are not investors. And you keep on doing that all the time. Step two, make contact. Now, it sounds obvious, okay? But I told you, I've got a solid system, not some Jedi mind trick that magically convinces, strangers to hand over cash from miles away. Now, making contact, yes, but I think there's nothing worse that you can do than firing off cold DMs asking for money. That never works, okay? Save your breath. Don't even waste your time on that. If you start blasting out cold messages to everyone saying, hey Joe, I want to raise money, no one will reply. No one. So what should you do instead? What you will do is you will craft a sharp, personalized message, not too long, not too short, that actually speaks to and triggers the person on the other end. So you will write something like, hey Jane, been checking out your work in whatever, really interesting career. And it stood out for me because I'm currently facing, and there, you briefly describe a real challenge that you have, but that is also relevant and interesting to her. Okay? So that's, I think, the key from personalization. You describe a real challenge, but interesting and relevant to her. So, hey Jane, been checking out your work and whatever. It's real interesting career, really stood out to me because this is my challenge and it's relevant and interesting to her. I would genuinely appreciate any perspective you can share, and I think it could save me some serious rookie mistakes. I totally understand if you're not open to it, but if you're up for a quick chat, whenever it works for you, it would mean a lot. Thanks. Okay? P.S. If we lived closer, the coffee would be on me. And if you live close enough, maybe you can meet up in real life. But this is powerful. Okay? Listen to it again. Adapt it a bit. But I think there are already many subtle and powerful elements in there that you could literally copy-paste. So, not going to repeat it. You can listen to it. But I think that's key. It's all woven in there. And because you are describing your challenge in a way that's genuinely relatable, it doesn't sound like the usual, let's have a chat, what about a coffee, or, that every salesperson throws out, because that's the new way that's the new kind of tricks that salespeople use. So we are making clear it's not a sales pitch. I'm sharing my challenge. I'm not trying to talk about a challenge that she may have, because otherwise, the assumption that we have is if we are talking about a challenge she may have, well, sales pitch. They're trying to sell me the solution because that's the template that every vendor is using. So I'm sharing my challenge, but one that directly connects to her expertise. And if it overlaps with challenges she may currently have or may have experienced, even better. And that's what sets this apart. So we don't trigger the sales alarm. It's a genuine conversation starter. It's appealing to her ego or his ego, and it's showing real respect for her insight. Okay, so you've sent that out. Jane responds. Now what? we get a call. What are we going to do? Are we going to pitch her? Are we going to ask for money on that call? Of course not. I mean, that would instantly kill the trust, and it would make her think that you are a shady scammer. Maybe she will even get angry in that call and hang up. So then, what do? Because we know we are trying to raise money. Well, there comes step 3. Now we activate the relationship. And along the way, we learn and gain some valuable perspectives. But step 3 is about activating and learning. But activating is key. So how do you do that? Well, you get on that call and you listen. You really listen. You give some context, some introduction, but she already knows why she's there, right? Why she's on that call, because you gave the context about your challenge. So you listen. You collect lots of ideas. You ask sharp questions. This is important. Again, you want to appear sharp. Remember, this is one of the key components. You dig deeper in whatever she gives you. You challenge the people on that call. Politely, of course. Okay, you don't call out their bullshit, but you challenge them. You maybe build some scenarios. Oh, interesting perspective, but what if XYZ? And you watch where the conversation takes you. You need at all times to keep an open mind. And I would say record that conversation and write everything down. So that's how you activate a relationship. You get on that call, you listen, you collect ideas, you interact, you ask sharp questions, and you write everything down. Now, don't be sequential. Okay, this is key. What you need to do is you need to try to open as many conversations as possible with as many people as you possibly can in parallel. Okay, too often when I share this method, I hear people tell me, "Oh, I did 2 calls this week, so next week I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna analyze them so that I can." No, you push for as many conversations as possible. Fast. Remember, this is your top of the funnel loading. So don't be lazy. You push, you go sequential, because you're going to understand in step 4 what we're going to do once we've activated that relationship. Now, it's key. That's why I say activate. Yes, you listen. Yes, you learn, but there needs to be interaction, sharp questions to dig deeper. They need to come out of that conversation thinking, it's a sharp person. It's an interesting project. Okay. So you frame that from your challenge. It's great because you know where you start from or where you're starting from. And of course, you can use different challenges for different people, but it's not a one-way street. There needs to be an interaction. That's how you activate a relationship. And you do that in parallel and with as many people as you can. And when you do that, what will happen is, because you write everything down, you will start seeing patterns. Clusters of people converging on the same ideas. So in other words, a certain number of people will suggest the same ideas. And it's always like that. So you will notice that a certain number of ideas keep popping up again and again. So after a couple of weeks of calls, I don't know, let's say you've done 40 calls, you will end up with a spreadsheet where you have 40 people across the columns and maybe, 100 ideas filling the rows, things that they've suggested around your challenge. Okay, so great. You're going to say, now what? Okay, you've gathered valuable insights. Interesting, but how do you turn all those insights, all that noise, into actual fundraising? In my example, you've got, I told you, 40 people in the columns and 100 ideas in the rows, right? Well, at each intersection, you're going to put a 1 if that person found that idea interesting, or a 0 if they didn't. So for example, if person number 3 liked or mentioned idea number 15, okay, you put a 1. If person 3 didn't mention or didn't like idea number 15, you put a 0. Okay, and then you sum up each row. Okay, all the ideas, you sum them up. So all the ones will add up, and you pick the rows with the highest totals. So in other words, you pick the ideas that the most people came up with or found interesting. Because of course, at a certain point in time, when you start seeing patterns, you can use that as a challenge in your next conversation. So let's say that you saw that, oh, something recurring came up, you have your next conversation with a new person about that challenge, that person shares her vision or her ideas, then you can say, oh, by the way, what about this? And you share that idea and you see if that person likes it, builds on this, gives you additional ideas, and that's, an intersection. It's a one if that person likes it or mentions it. So you sum up the rows and you look at the rows with the highest total. So what you have is the ideas that the most people found interesting or mentioned. And that's the key. If you find those ideas interesting as well, if you think they're worth it, well, you take the best ones and you run with them. So you implement them. Even if it's just, conceptually or with a mock-up or whatever, you take those ideas and you implement them. And now that you've implemented a few of these ideas, whatever, of course, again, implementing means in your particular case, or whatever gets close enough to implementing, now you circle back to everyone who suggested those ideas. And you say something like, hey, you gave me this idea. It was truly brilliant. Thank you so much. I actually implemented it, want to see what it looks like, blah, blah, blah. Of course, critical, you never, ever mention that 20 other people suggested the same idea. That's key. Their brilliant insight has to feel unique, right? It's a one of a kind. So you stroke that ego. But when you do that, when you actually follow up, which, by the way, almost no one bothers to do, because most people, they just take and they never give feedback. Okay? I talk about this in my Circles of Influence masterclass. Anyway, when you do that, when you actually follow up, something changes. So once you complete this process and follow up, people are genuinely and positively surprised. They're happy because they see you're making progress, you're evolving, and that you actually listened to them. And that, trust me, and it's not people are like that, we are like that, right? When someone says, hey, that idea that you gave me, it solved my challenge, thank you so much, brilliant. That's like music to our ears, okay? But here's the catch again. That alone is great, but it's not enough. So the real key here is the speed of implementation. What is speed of implementation? It's basically the distance, I call that, between the moment you hear or learn something and the moment that you actually act on it. Okay, for this to work, what you want is you want to implement ideas that make sense as fast and as well as you can. You want to reduce that distance between the moment you hear something and you act upon it. And that, right there, that speed of implementation. So by combining the timely feedback and speed, that's how you create the most important thing in fundraising. And it's what I call potential. Okay, now what do I mean by potential? It's when you show that you are moving fast, learning fast, and improving fast. And because of that speed and that quality of implementation, because of your precise execution, remember what we've said, ideas don't get funded, execution does. So because of your precise execution, that shows how quickly you can close the gap between ideas and reality. You suddenly open a window of opportunity in their minds. That's key. There is a window of opportunity in their minds. You trigger a feeling like everything seems possible. And that feeling makes people believe that the next step could be even bigger, even better, even higher. And that's the perfect moment to pull them in, to get them involved. That's the moment when you actually raise funds. And so your step 4, basically, it's still part of that. At this point, what will happen is when you ask for the investment, by using this system, you put the other person in a completely different mental space. It's no longer, should I invest because they asked me for money? But it's more rather than, I've added value. and I can keep adding value. This person is smart, fast, pleasant to interact with, to work with. And they truly get the industry and the problem that they're solving. And I know the industry and the challenge. So, should I invest? So you end up with the same potential outcome, people investing, but it's a totally different game. This flips the entire power dynamic. Because when you go to someone and you say, listen to my idea and this and that, it's like when someone asks you for a sale, right? When someone grabs you when you walk into a shop and say, hey, do you have a minute to listen to this and that? Your mental barriers go up and you're like, uh-oh, they want my money, right? So now it's not the same thing anymore. Now it's like, oh yeah, they're smart, pleasant, they've implemented my idea, they listened. So it changes that dynamic. And that brings us to the final step, of course, step 4, that I call everything is in the script. And the script for asking the money has to be sharp and precise. It's not, please give me some money. It's something more like, look, we've worked together, and I truly believe that you can add tremendous value in what I'm trying to build here. So I've been thinking it over, and I would love for you to be on board with me in some capacity. And, for that, I would like you to put in a bit of money. So I've been thinking about opening a spot for you to invest, up to this amount for this much equity. So, and you see where it lands. Okay, does it land with the full amount, less, whatever? So, but you give them an amount. It can be the total amount, and you tell them for how much equity. But it's all good. It doesn't matter where it lands, the full amount, less, because you've been running this process with others in parallel. So, of course, you want to prioritize the most interesting profiles, sure. But if you pull this off with enough people at the same time, well, you can raise some serious money. I know of people who've raised 1, 2, even, up to 5 million with this system. And in Europe, I'm talking, not in the US, which is, a totally different market, in Europe. But you need to remember what I said earlier. Don't make the mistake of treating this like a traditional fundraising round. It's one investor at a time, one conversation at a time, each one its own deal. So even when I say, raising 1 or 2 million, don't assume that it means 1 or 2 big ticket investors. Okay, you can piece it together with smaller checks. 10,000 euro tickets, or 50,000 euro tickets, or dollars, whatever. Maybe 100,000, 200,000 euro tickets. It all adds up because you've been doing it with enough people at the same time. And again, remember this: how much you raise, how fast, and from how many people is multifactorial. So it depends on that whole mix of variables. There's no fixed formula to this. So as I've said, for some, it's easy and fast. For others, it's slow, messy, and painful. But that's not the point. The point is, you will get somewhere, you will raise something, and that's what matters. And that's the real beauty of the system. 1, anyone can use it. 2, in the age of AI, because of course I have to talk about artificial intelligence somewhere, right? We're in 2025. In the age of AI, with today's tools, it's even more powerful. Cold outreach, follow-ups, writing emails, testing ideas, implementing ideas, all of it is faster, cheaper, and more scalable than ever. Okay, just think about, I don't know, the implementation side alone. Okay, before having an idea, what did it mean? It meant weeks of coding, of back and forth, of delays. Okay, now if someone drops you an interesting idea and you can build a prototype, not a finalized product, you can do that in 48 hours. You can iterate fast, and you circle back to them with something real, not theory. Okay, what you see and feel has a different flavor than just an idea. So that's the thing, speed of implementations. And with these tools, you can iterate fast. Okay? And that kind of speed, that wasn't possible before. It didn't exist. Okay? Now it does. So use it. People will be impressed. And number three, in the beauty of this system, is that this system naturally filters for the right investors, for the best ones. So why? Because it implicitly zeroes in on people who gave you the sharpest or most valuable ideas. But not just that, it goes beyond the ideas. It filters for the ones who actually give a damn, okay? Who engage, who push back, who challenge you, who go back and forth. So they are thinking with you. They're not just passively watching from the sidelines, which is what most traditional investors do. Okay? Traditional investors, they stay passive and they want endless updates and reports, and they want to understand things, and they want justifications, and the kind of stuff that drains your time, your energy, and adds zero value. Okay. Now, I'm not criticizing. Okay, they've put some money in it and they're passive investors, so it's logical that they're keeping an eye on their investment. But for you, it's super draining and it adds zero value. This is different. It's an implicit selection filter. So you don't just get capital. You get brain power. You get feedback. You get expertise. You get access to their network. And maybe even you will get some personal time from someone who's actually invested in what you're building. It's not just passive. Maybe they're going to take on some active role in some capacity, whatever. So this is key. And I think that people don't understand how powerful this system is. Now, obviously, this is just the surface. Okay? There's a lot more details creeping in once you dive into the process. But from my experience, this is a powerful, if not the most powerful way to raise money, even if you're starting from zero. And don't forget, check out the other videos that I mentioned, because they're all 100% free. So you will find them on my YouTube or Spotify. Now, if you're trying to raise money, there are, I think, a few of these videos that I've made that I highly recommend. And they don't just talk about fundraising directly, but they will help you build the skills around it. Storytelling, influence, building a network, strategy, mindset, positioning, the stuff that most founders skip, but that actually are force multipliers. So to find them, you can just head to my YouTube or Spotify channel, Gaetan Portaels, and look for, I think the first one that I mentioned is, I helped raise 5.2 million euro. Here's how you can do it too, where I break down the core principles of fundraising in today's world. So what really matters when you're out there trying to close real money. The second video that I would recommend is Circles of Influence. So this is my free, I think it's 3-hour 40 networking masterclass, which is a unique system that I've built and refined, for building your network again in today's world. It's designed to work in 2025 and beyond. So where I show you how to reach high-level people, what to say, how to build real connection, rapport, and how to turn those connections into actual opportunities. So will you use them to raise funds? Maybe not, but will you use them further down the road to have the right foundations and surround yourself with the right circles of influence? Definitely. It's not a short-term game, it's a mid to long-term game. Learn it. And I think maybe two other interesting or important ones for the list, because they all complement each other, is HexaBrain. HexaBrain, the ultimate science of influence, which is another free 3-hour masterclass, because I think whether you are building a company, pitching investors, as you're trying to do right now, or even raising kids, your ability to influence is detrimental to everything you do. And I think you realize this is even more true when it comes to fundraising. When you're asking strangers to do one of the hardest things possible, open their wallets and give you their hard-earned money. So in this masterclass, I will walk you through the HexaBrain model, which I created, which is basically a blueprint for connecting with every part of the brain. The conscious, the subconscious, the logical, the emotional. I break down 93 advanced strategies that are rooted in neuroscience and deep real-world persuasion to help you communicate, pitch, and move people at the highest levels. And the last one, the last interesting one, I think, is trillion-dollar faces, which was no personal brand, no business future. And it's a 90-minute live session that I delivered at a private business summit in Zurich a few months ago. And in it, I break down how the economy is mutating and why I believe that a personal brand is the key to staying ahead and owning your future. And I think this matters for you too, because if you are watching this video, it's probably because you're following me on LinkedIn. So because you resonate with my personal brand. And that makes me more valuable. Okay? I mean, without lifting a single finger, people reach out to me daily, asking for advice, for me to consult for them or their business, to ask me to invest in their businesses, but also plenty of people who want to invest in whatever I am building. So if I'm ever looking for funds, I have a huge list to start from. So a personal brand gets you that. But I think even more important, because realistically, building a personal brand will take you 6 to 12 months at least to build something, an early stage. But a personal brand will set your business up for the long game. So check out that keynote. It's a crash course on how to build a personal brand, how social media algorithms really work and how you can tame them. But I also cover in that video the impact of artificial intelligence, of AI, on personal branding and on your business. All of that. All right. Now, because it's getting quite hot, maybe you can hear the cigalas chanting in the distance, but you don't raise by thinking. You don't raise money by thinking about it. No matter how hard, you will not manifest it to life. You raise by doing. So get out there, move, act, and please, my last advice, forget about burning your chances. Okay? Don't be paralyzed by the idea of screwing up with someone. With the system I've just given you, that I've just delivered, there are plenty of fish in the ocean. So even if you screw up with hundreds of them because your first interactions are not good or bad, there are always more. This system hands you more chances than you will ever need. So this isn't theory, it's a weapon. Okay. So put the system to work because nobody funds inaction. Now, go and raise some money. Thanks for watching.